For all of the context regarding my experience with the first two Alvin and the Chipmunks movies, watch my reviews of those movies all the way through, because there are some details there that I will be referencing throughout this next review, even though it may not be necessary anymore because it doesn't sound essential to know the plots of each movie before seeing the subsequent sequels. Any spoilers for the first two movies will be completely unmarked throughout this entire video. First of all, a couple members of the AATC Wiki's Discord server have complained that my last two review videos are not proper review whatsoever, and more time was spent on my preconceptions which contain more non-sequitur stories than actual film review. Even though this format has a fan or two, I have to make a confession at this point. I actually can't make a proper film review with completely original thoughts. If I have to make a proper film review, then this is one of the few remaining things in my life that I can only rely on others' views such as TV Tropes, or before 2018, the Nostalgia Critic, or even Grandy Tomias's retrospective videos, which I have been encouraged to base some of this and my next review off in my Discord DMs with him. But I still want to go in there completely blind because I don't want to parrot anybody anymore. I already had a lot planned for what I'm going to say in this video, as well as the next one, but if that apparently doesn't make it proper review material, then I'd much rather cancel those two respective videos, because I clearly don't know how to be intellectual in film reviews. But since I don't want any broken promises that would make my viewers call me a liar, I might as well carry on. I had made sure to add chapter markers to my last two videos so that my viewers would know where to skip to if they wanted to skip certain parts, but apparently nobody bothered to pay attention to their existence. So this time, in addition to the chapters in this video, I might as well explicitly tell them where to go. If you want to see my closest guess to a proper film review of this movie, skip to this time code. I am not quite so sure if I remember how I was first exposed to the existence of Chipwrecked. I guess to me it was just a sleeper arrival that didn't surprise me at all. Besides, there weren't any momentous character introductions or significant pre-release memories there as there were for me in the previous two movies, just like how my memories of what the Nostalgia Critic said in his Chipmunks videos started to decay with each one. As I said previously, I became a fan of Alvin and the Chipmunks through his video on the first movie, and I talked about how his video on the second movie wasn't nearly as satisfying to watch in regards to the whole franchise. Then on February 27th, 2018, the NC uploaded his review video of Chipwrecked, which ended up being one of the very last Nostalgia Critic videos I ever saw before Change the Channel made me stop watching the series and wish I was never a fan of him in the first place. As I said in my review of the first movie, if I was never a fan of the NC in the first place, I wouldn't have become a Chipmunks fan because he basically, albeit indirectly, enabled my curiosity to try out that classic chipmunk voice technique. This was that self-blaming behavior of me wishing I could change the past that would get debunked with what I basically realized was the plot of It's a Wonderful Life and nearly every Played Straight clone ever. But back to the Chipwrecked video specifically, that video came out just over a month before Change the Channel happened. Because of this, I didn't watch that video nearly as many times as the other two videos, so I don't have nearly as many recollections of what he said there as the other two. In my last two review videos, I did bring up the NC's respective episodes a couple times for my own thoughts on them and how I debunked their points. But now I am not so sure if I have enough NC recollections to bring up when I review this movie for real, so don't be surprised if I don't bring any up this time. To prepare for the possibility of me wanting to buy the Blu-ray bundle of the entire series, I wanted to find out if the bundle I'm looking for is for the right region. And no, I'm not looking for the Blu-ray region code, because my country's region code is the same as Southeast Asia's and South America's region code. Besides, many Blu-rays are coded to work with all three regions anyway. What I'm actually looking for is the parental ratings. just to make sure that they are MPAA ratings and not BBFC ratings from Britain, or even Australian Classification Board ratings from Australia. On one hand, I was pleased to find out that this bundle was printed for the right country, but at the same time, I ended up completely shocked to find out that out of all of the films in this series, Chipwrecked is the only one that is rated G and not PG like the other entries. This was the first time I had ever heard of that revelation, as I had expected literally all entries to be PG. You see, as I got older during my preteen years, I stopped paying attention to what parental ratings movies got for obvious reasons, which is why I found out about Chipwrecked's MPA rating as late into the movie's existence as I did. On top of that, I have always been shocked to hear whenever later entries of a film received a lower rating than the others. I have gotten used to films in a series being given the exact same MPA rating, or to a lesser extent, a higher rating. I just thought that films needed to be rated the same as each other just for the sake of consistency, and even as a kid, I was shocked when sequels get a higher rating, but that's only because I felt like I had to be just a little bit older in order to watch them. Later on, I found out that a sequel being given a lower rating than the rest would be a major red flag towards the film's quality, as history would show that those respective later entries would end up being not good, which started to make me fearful that Chipwrecked would be the absolute low point of the series. It basically got that dreaded G rating, but then again, every single entry in this series was considered not good, so that wouldn't be of much use, which is why even after I became a Chipmunks fan, I refrained from watching any of the movies until now. I subscribed to Disney Plus last October, and before the new year, 3 of the 4 movies were on this service. When I first considered watching the movies, that number used to be 2. Then, a little later on, it was increased to 3. But now, since January 1st, it came right back down to 2. Chipwrecked has now been removed from Disney Plus in the US, and I thought the squeakquel was the one I had to pay to rent on VUDU. As someone who wanted to save as much money as humanly possible, I naturally vented about this to, quite frankly at this point, my best friend in the Chipmunks fandom, who subsequently said that it's not that much money to part ways with, and that others spend hundreds in similar pursuits, and just like my regrets in the NC making me a fan, fruitless purchases may make a better future as well. Besides, there could still be a chance that the movie would be far more uncomfortable to watch than anything else. But then again, if I do like the movie, maybe this duplicate waste of money could actually have been better spent on a blind Blu-ray bundle anyway. I said in my review of the second movie that I would never buy films blindly unless I already know that I would like them, even if they are in bundles. Well, very hypocritically, I did actually happen to buy the RoboCop trilogy on Blu-ray last year without even seeing 2 or 3, simply because I liked the first one and wanted to make sure I got the unrated version. And later that year, I did manage to also buy the TMNT movie quadrilogy bundle on digital because at sale price, it was the same price as buying 2 of the films individually at their sale prices, even when seeing the 4th one as a mixed bag and knowing that the 3rd one was regarded as the worst of them all. So bad that the AVGN delved out of gaming to devote an entire canonical episode to trashing it, even physically, all the way back in 2007. Now, I have seen the 3rd TMNT movie first, but I haven't watched it in a long time, so now I'm not so sure if it's either worse than I remember or another nostalgia-inducing guilty pleasure of mine, just like the 2nd TMNT movie. All this would probably justify any and all pleas from fans for me to get the AATC Films bundle on Blu-ray without seeing all of the films firsthand. And since Chipwrecked is no longer on Disney Plus, and I would have to pay to rent on VUDU otherwise, maybe I should just take the shortcut and buy the bundle right away and save the $4 I would have pounded on top of the $20 I would already have to pay for the bundle anyway. But that would leave me with an excruciating dilemma here. Either pay $24 now for a rental of Chipwrecked on top of the whole Blu-ray bundle, knowing that that extra $4 would have been wasteful duplication if I also bought the bundle anyway, or pay $20 for the bundle alone and be saddled with the risk that I might end up refusing to see up to 2 permanent additions to my movie library ever again after finding out they were god-awful. I was told that this mindset was necessary in this case because I wanted to review them, but as I said earlier in my disclaimer on my review format, I couldn't figure out how to make a proper film review without parroting anybody. On top of that, the only reason why I'm reviewing these movies on this channel in the first place was because these are live-action, theatrical entries in this franchise. Just like the Sonic movie from 2020 in its respective franchise, which my pesteriest fan there wanted me to make a review of on my main channel when it came out, which I did, so I believed it was the most appropriate for me to make reviews of these movies on this channel, especially if I have never seen them in full without the reliance on caustic reviews until now. When I reviewed the first movie, I wanted to see it 2 days in advance because I wanted some time to make my first impressions proper. When I reviewed the second movie, its limited availability on Peacock meant that I had half a month since that movie left that service to cook up proper thoughts on that movie. That gave me a brilliant idea for when to see the next 2 movies relative to the date I'm supposed to finish their reviews. So, I am going to see Chipwrecked literally as soon as possible so that I could thoroughly flesh out my proper first impressions in a cohesive way, even with spontaneous notes taken, and if for some reason I feel like it and have enough time, I might also go through Grandy Tomias's retrospective video on the movie for clarification, and maybe inform you all that some of my initial thoughts have actually conformed to his own, as I am completely impressionable. In fact, this is exactly why I wanted to see and review these movies completely blind, without literally anything to change my mind beforehand or afterwards, and not even bother seeing his retrospective videos at all. After all, you're here for me, not him. So regardless of whether I see any third-party clarification afterwards, here is my review of Alvin and the Chipmunks Chipwrecked on VUDU. Now, I was originally going to leave in what I was saying on the spot with this screen capture of proof of no free or subscription services containing the movie and my VUDU purchase process, but I am not going to bother for 2 reasons. 1, I didn't bother checking to see if I was using the right microphone, so now I'm stuck with my impromptu voiceover with terrible microphone quality. And 2nd, I got just a bit ranty during that proof, as well as a bit too embarrassingly hesitant on figuring out what to say at the moment, so I might as well show you this impromptu visual with yet another piece of scripted voiceover. This is partly why I don't do live streams. Now I just hope I'm not wasting money here. And now I will wait 2 days for the purchase to show up on my credit card statement before I begin watching the movie, because I prefer to treat paying off my credit card the same way I actually pay for the product if I was using cash. PSA, credit cards are not free money. Treat everything you buy with a credit card the same way you treat things you buy with what you already have in your bank account. If anything, the biggest thing I get criticized for in regards to my credit card usage was paying it off too early instead of too late. This payment was made on February 6th. See you guys in a couple days. Okay, so the day after I paid to rent, I got a $5 reward from Fandango, VUDU's current parent company, congratulating me after spending enough money on their storefront with the credit card I was using, so I was thinking about treating that reward that's indicated on my TV right now as used on the Chipwrecked rental. but then that left me confused overanalyzing, so I'm not gonna go even further. It's now February 8th, and I'm gonna watch this movie at night, because I wanted to give myself a chance to watch this uninterrupted for dinner breaks or whatever. Unlike on Peacock, I won't have any ad breaks to take notes during since I paid to rent. Then again, the Peacock showing did only one ad break, so I'm just as helpless here as I already was there. As you know, I am not a multitasker, so I hope I remember enough of what's going on for me to take note of. Here we go, everybody. As always, Chipmunks fans who have seen this movie far earlier than I did, spoilers ahead. In the squeakquel, I had such huge qualms with the overabundance of outdated pop culture references there. Well, in Chipwrecked, we got nearly none of them. Instead, we get an overabundance of cover songs. Even the NC complained that there were 3 different ones within the first 5 minutes. And yes, I did check. The third song did kick in at around 4 minutes and 40 seconds. I think he went a bit too far with that joke regarding brain implantation though, even back when I first saw the video. Besides, I think the song frequency seemed to have really toned down as the movie went on, especially during the second half. I guess they just wanted to cram them all into the cruise ship sequence and the introduction to the island sequence, just so the songs don't distract from the character development for the rest of the movie. Speaking of which, Dave starts out just as unforgiving and not trusting towards Alvin as he probably would be if he was just as stressed out from the Chipmunks in his life as he has been ever since they first joined. Even Simon told him to trust Alvin a little bit, to which Dave responded, no, he'll just fly off the rails in a horse track example. This lack of forgiveness and trust is even further reinforced when Dave finds out that the monks broke the cabin rules, with him saying, I trusted you tonight, and look where you got me. No wonder I had theories that paralleled at least my downfall parodies that suggested that Dave would never forgive Alvin for what he's done, even when the latter did good things. But to Alvin, that didn't even matter anymore, because ever since they crash-landed on the island, he started gaining standards himself, especially when Simone took over Simon. Simone is basically like if Simon had none of his prior standards, and of course, was French as well. During that period, Alvin basically took over Simon's former role of rule enforcer, which, to be honest, if you were stranded on an island, fighting for survival, and if one of your own brothers is not acting like himself, what else would you become? He even felt remorseful over driving Dave crazy, thinking he hates him after being separated for so long. And even when Dave finally did find them, Alvin insists that despite Dave telling him otherwise, he has to disobey, for the lives of all his friends, when the volcano on the island was about to erupt, proving that sometimes a racehorse needs just a little room to run. Just not too much room, as was demonstrated on that airplane in the mid-credits scene, but at least what he did didn't physically hurt anyone, not even Dave this time. Even Brittany had potential for redemption too, including building herself a far more beautiful treehouse than Alvin, though now I'm thinking it's just another product of her fashion obsession, and encouraging Simon post-Simone to cross that log again, even after him chickening out, with her saying, Simone is still in you, Simon, you just have to look for him and be brave enough to do what he did again, in which he eventually did, to rescue Jeanette from Zoe at the last minute. Ah yes, let's talk about Zoe, the island castaway. She's basically like a female hybrid between Chuck Noland and Long John Silver. The former with not only her castaway status, but especially her obsession with befriending of sports balls, even more so than just a volleyball. But then again, if she has been stranded on the island for 5 more years than Chuck, how much crazier would you get? The Long John Silver part of her is basically her obsession with trying to find some buried treasure on the island. She even went so far as to manipulate Jeanette into fitting into that tight hole leading to the treasure and picking it up and bringing it all to her. All while the volcano was on the verge of erupting and practically going to destroy the whole island. She was more obsessed with getting that treasure than the lives of anybody, just like how Ian Hawke had very skewed priorities himself. Even before I saw the movie, I knew that Ian was going to appear again, but then again, even after seeing it, I wouldn't be surprised to find out the reason why his actor had such a tough time on set. He spent nearly the entire movie in a pelican costume. Speaking of that pelican costume, I'm sorry you had to go through all that torment, David Cross. I love you and I love your performance in these movies, but your character has become such a jerkwad that he basically had no other choice but to become a measly, otherwise naked pelican entertainer on that cruise ship. And to turn down Justin Bieber twice? I mean, Justin was such a big deal, even if he was the most hated thing ever at the time of this movie's release. Doug Walker is a filthy hypocrite. And so is Ian, who told Dave near the beginning, "I'm not one of your chipmunks that you can just boss around and stuff into a cage," which Dave called him out immediately afterwards for stuffing them into a cage, not to mention the fact he kept on his whole never my fault behavior. Then during Dave's search for Alvin on the island, Ian makes it even clearer that he never even cared enough about our boys to begin with. First of all, when Dave referred to them as his sons, Ian responded, "He's not your son, he's just a chipmunk." He even went so far as to become a fat shamer by always calling Theodore Chubby One, with just a hint of sexism by calling Eleanor Girl Chubby One. Ian would also make a great Tommy Mottola.
Tommy Mottola is a devil.
Because as he and Dave were looking for the boys, he made the suggestion that if the Chipmunks were dead, he would capitalize on it by making tribute albums and everything, just like how people blame Sony Music for indirectly killing Michael Jackson just to capitalize on his dead status, simply because he was worth more dead than alive. Ian came so close a few times to redemption on that island. First of all, he told Dave that Dave did nothing wrong right before going over to hug him, and then eating that necklace gift of his from Theo, which Dave kept telling him not to do. And then by the end, when Zoe was about to kick Dave towards his death, Ian came in and suffered a verbal dilemma. At that point, I guess the filmmakers weren't quite so sure whether to make Ian truly redeem himself or make him a textbook jerk with a heart of jerk by having him tell her, "You have to save Dave." But then again, you don't have to. It's really up to you. I don't mind either way. I mean, if Zoe cared that much about getting that treasure for herself, she would probably kick Dave to his death. But then again, if even she realized that the volcano was just about to erupt and kill everything on the island, including herself, what else would she do? In my Squeakquel review, I did bring up quite a few quotes in both that movie and the first one that really paralleled what I happened to write down for my audio shorts. But this was only because they were actually written by former AATC forum users who most definitely did see the movies beforehand and referenced them. My acting there was just probably inconsistent from their acting in these movies I never saw at the time. Well, I actually did happen to come across a brand new parallel in this movie, this time to an audio short that I wrote all by myself, without even knowing that this movie had it as well. No, I received no help from anyone who saw the movies whatsoever. This was completely coincidental this time around. For those of you who don't know what I mean, let me explain. Last Christmas, I made a Christmas short adapted from a pitch by the AATC Wiki's admin of a new Christmas song called "Dave Got Run Over by a Reindeer," which I already knew right off the bat would be a cover of "Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer." Here, the Chipmunks stay at an Alaskan lodge where Dave hastily rushes out in a snowstorm all by himself to try and make it back to California at the last minute to sign a contract back there. And then the next morning, when the Chipmunks trek out to find him after he didn't return, Theodore remarks that it was too cold to go out in the first place, and then sneezes before Alvin tells him,
"Munch up, Theo. If we all made it this far, we can make it just a little further."
Well, this first part of that quote is almost exactly the same line that Alvin told Theodore after he wanted to watch a baby movie before switching to a jungle monster movie, in which, no, there was no payoff of his fear of that aforementioned jungle monster, unlike his fear of eagles in the Squeakquel. At least not that I could find. I also just want to point out that there was a role reversal of that quote later on when Theo volunteered to go bungee jumping with Simone and Alvin didn't want to. There is also that aforementioned grudge Dave had against Alvin at the beginning that paralleled my fan theories about Dave refusing to give Alvin any second chances, even if he did something good, after he put on a tux, said he's feeling lucky, and went out to the casino. Speaking of the casino, one brick joke I find particularly funny takes place when Simon went out looking for Alvin there before his weight pulled down the lever on a slot machine as he was navigating the place, and once the machine activates, it hits the treasure chest jackpot. Several minutes later, the casino managers congratulate Simon by giving him his winnings. Certainly Simon should have felt lucky. Despite some liberties taken, this is yet another solid look at how the Chipmunks show off their personalities, as well as how much Alvin, and to a lesser extent Brittany, can change for the better under certain life-changing scenarios. And other parts are quite fun to watch as well. Fun enough for me to count this as a future personal library edition. Which is why I find it ridiculous when the NC brought up this movie as an example of when adaptations and sequels and knockoffs don't even try. But as John has said quite a few times,
no one sets out to purposely make a bad film. Filmmaking is just too hard to not try to make something good or meaningful or a statement. It's a lot easier to just, not make movies than to go and try to make a bad one. Now, sure, intentions are good and things happen. And people make movies for all sorts of reasons. People make movies just for money as a day job. Studios make cash grabs. And sometimes filmmakers get lazy or have to meet a tight deadline and can't do what they promised. But no one involved in the craft is doing it because they don't, at some level, love filmmaking. I mean, there are a lot easier ways to make a living.
If you want to make a wealthy living, you become a doctor or a lawyer. But filmmaking is something you do just because you're obsessed.
Honestly, I think these two did a far better job explaining this reasoning than I could possibly do so in my own words. At the end of my preconceptions, I did bring up the possibility of me looking through Granny Tobias's retrospective video for a second opinion. But as I said, I would rather not advertise others' channels in a review video of mine, especially throughout an entire section. And besides, I just came up with a great alternative. So even if I was going to say anything in regards to his retrospective video, I'd much rather leave a comment on that video, as well as the one on the road chip when I see that one as well. So if you want to hear my thoughts on how those videos changed my mind on these movies, check back later for a pinned comment of mine on this video, as well as my review videos of the other movies, linking to his respective retrospective videos so you can watch them for yourself, then find my own comment in them. Okay, 3 out of the 4 done. Now let's just hope to God that the road chip doesn't get removed from Disney Plus before I get started.